Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Thank you. So we are reading Bhagavad-gita, chapter 2, which is called Contents of the Gita Summarized, because in some ways Krishna is just really quickly going through everything that he's going to speak about in the Bhagavad-gita. That's a very good teaching method. Quickly tell what you're going to speak about it, and then summarize what you spoke about. And last week we just finished this Nishkam Karma Yoga part. I'll just quickly go through it because it's a very long chapter and it's easy to get lost in the few weeks that we've been studying. So Arjuna's further doubts and surrender, that's quite clear. Anyone remembers what are the reasons Arjuna gives for not wanting to fight?
Compassion.
Yeah? What else?
Sin.
Yeah, very good.
Indecision.
Yeah,
Instruction of family values.
yeah. And the fifth one?
Ignorance.
Enjoyment.
enjoyment.
How am I going to enjoy if everybody dies? Okay, and then first of all, Krishna gives him Atmagyana, knowledge of the soul is eternal, and that kind of counters Arjuna's compassion argument. So you're not really killing anyone. Not that we use this as an excuse for indiscriminate killing, but okay, and then first application of this knowledge about the soul, Atmagyana, is Karma Kanda. So if you fight, if you do your prescribed duties, then you will enjoy because you get good karma, either on earth. If you win in the war, then you can enjoy an earthly kingdom. If you lose and die, then you go to heaven as a kshatriya who was doing your duty. So if it's not that you won't enjoy if you fight, it's actually the only way to enjoy is if you fight, meaning if you do your duty. So this counters Arjuna's enjoyment argument. And then the next one, the second application is of this knowledge about the soul, Atmagyana, is Nishkam Karma Yoga. Anyone remembers what this Nishkam Karma Yoga, what this long expression means?
Act without desire.
Mm-hmm. Work without desire. Yoga means... Sorry?
Offer all your activities to the Lordships.
Very good. That's what I was just going to say. So yoga means connect with the Supreme. So not just without desire, but also connect with the Supreme. So then it's a higher level than Karma Kanda. It's not just about enjoyment, but it's also connecting with the Supreme. And if you fight with detachment, then you don't get sinful reactions. Because the sinful reactions don't come for the activity itself, but for the selfish motivation. So this counters Arjuna's sinful reactions argument. Okay, so that's where we are now. And we'll continue with text 254. No, sorry. Chapter 2, text 54. Arjuna Vacha Sita Pragyasya Kabhasa Samadhistasya Keshava Sitaddikim Prabhaseta Kimaseta Vrajeta Kim. Vaishnava Prabhu?
Arjuna said, O Krishna, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged in transcendence? How does he speak? And what is his language? How does he sit? How does he walk?
Thank you. So far what's been happening is that Arjuna is asking this question based on his own understanding, what he's been hearing. So I don't know if you noticed, when you hear a class, at most people remember about 20% of it. That's like quite generous. So you usually remember either things that you really agree with or things that you really disagree with, something that really caught your attention. And it's the same that's what's happening with Arjuna. So even though Krishna is speaking about karma kanda, atma jnana, nishkam karma yoga, all these things to encourage him to fight, all that Arjuna has been hearing is that just be detached, don't fight. So Arjuna is still kind of not quite getting what Krishna wants to say. Especially the last few verses, Krishna was saying about, keep all abominable work far distant. So Krishna was speaking about karma kanda, but Arjuna took it as killing your relatives. So quite often we understand things based on our own perception. So this is where Arjuna is. And that's why he's asking this question about a sthita pragya, one who is situated, fixed in Krishna consciousness. So he wants to know about somebody who's merged in transcendence. He's hoping maybe Krishna will say, somebody who's merged in transcendence, they don't fight on a battlefield, they just sit peacefully under a banyan tree and meditate. So that's the kind of thinking process that's going on. But he's a very sincere student. So he asks, he doesn't just take it, okay, this is what Krishna means. He wants Krishna to clarify. Now that's one thing. The other thing is that the question itself can be a little bit difficult to understand. What does it mean? How does he speak? What is his language? Does he speak Sanskrit or English? How does he sit? Does he sit cross-legged? Or, does he sit on a chair? So these don't actually kind of mean literally sitting on a chair or on the floor. These refer to something deeper. And the acharyas explain it. So I kind of made up a slide. So these are the four things Arjuna asks about. What are his symptoms? Which means, what are his characteristics? What are his qualities? How does he speak? What is his language? It refers to his speech, but on a deeper level, it refers to how does he respond to situations? How is he affected by others' behavior? And then how does he sit refers to how does he not use his senses? How does he just kind of sit peacefully? Or it's about his self-control. How does he control his senses? How does he control his self? So how does he sit? How does he control his senses? And how does he walk? Means how does he engage his senses? So these are the four questions that are in the verse. What are his symptoms? How does he speak? How does he sit? How does he walk? And then this is the kind of deeper meaning to these questions. The symptoms are quite straightforward. What are his characteristics? How does he speak? How does he respond? How is he affected by others' behavior? How does he sit? How does he control his senses? And how does he walk? How does he engage his senses? So these are the questions. And if you understand the questions, it's much easier to understand when Krishna is answering. Otherwise, it can be very confusing that there is this verse 254. Arjuna asks these questions, and then Krishna starts speaking about something completely unrelated. So what's happening here? But if you understand the deeper meaning of the questions, you will see that the symptoms that's described in the next verse, 255, his speaking, his language, meaning how does he respond to others, it's 56, 57. How does he control his senses? 58 to 63, and how does he engage his senses? 64 to 71. So the numbers here, that's where Krishna answers those particular questions. Okay. Is this okay? Did I manage to explain this okay? Understandable? Okay. If you have Burijan Prabhu's book, he also explains the same thing there, so you can also read it there. But sometimes I find that if it's on a slide put together, makes it easier to follow. And then Prabhupada also in his purport, he translates it as symptoms, and he speaks about specific symptoms in various dealings by which somebody is known as a rich man or a diseased man. Speech is also important, because if a well-dressed fool is not recognized until he opens his mouth, and devotee only speaks about Krishna. Okay. And then if somebody's consciousness is transcendental, so if somebody's consciousness is merged in transcendence, then these things will automatically follow. So his transcendental symptoms, his transcendental response to situations, his transcendental self-control, and his transcendental sense engagement. You'll see that these are all connected. Okay, let's see the next verse. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Prajahati Yada Kaman Sarvam Parta Manogatan Atmanye Vatmana Tushta Stita Pragyasta Dochyate. Madhira Mataji?
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification, which arise from mental concoction, and when his mind, thus purified, finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness.
Thank you. So this answers the questions, what are his symptoms? What are his characteristics? So he rejects mental desires and finds satisfaction in the self. This characterizes this Stita Pragya person. So all the following verses speak about Stita Pragya. Stita means fixed, and Pragya means wisdom, intelligence. Prabhupada translates it as transcendentally situated. So this exact phrase is not used later, but kind of variations of it, and it all refers to the same person. So giving up desires originating from the mind and finding pleasure from the soul, from inside, which is joyful by nature. So rather than looking for things outside that's going to give me happiness, trying to find happiness in gulab jamuns or chocolate ice cream or whatever our preferred method of happiness, rather than going outwards, try to find happiness in the soul. And then materialists try to find this pleasure from outside, but as devotees, we should try to find the pleasure inside. Now, it doesn't mean that devotees don't do anything external, because quite often our greatest joy or greatest happiness comes from external things, even in Krishna consciousness. So I don't know, a few of you, if you could mention a thing that gives you the most happiness in Krishna consciousness.
Prasadam.
Prasadam, perfect, yeah. What else?
Serving prasadam.
Serving prasadam, very good. What else?
Morning program.
Morning program, kirtan, classes, being with devotees. What else?
Harinam.
Harinam. What else?
Serving the Lordship.
Serving their lordship, so deity service, pujari service, dressing the deities. These are really
Cooking for them. That's my
for them. Yeah, that's your favorite.
Yes.
Being in the association of devotees.
Very good. Yeah. So all these things you could say are external. You're engaging the senses, but because they take us inward, they take us inward in the sense of our relationship with Krishna. So these are not kind of external in that sense. They are all manifestations of Krishna. So even though they're external things, the pleasure comes from contact with Krishna or relationship with Krishna. And then the sense objects that don't have a relationship with Krishna, they take us away. But if we use the same things in relationship with Krishna, then we actually get real pleasure, real happiness. They remind us of Krishna, they connect us with Krishna. And even later when we are in pure love of God, we still do these things. We still cook for Krishna, we still do Harinam, we still serve prasadam, eat prasadam, because we love Krishna and all these things are related to Krishna. Okay, so this is important to understand, that it's not that devotees stop doing anything, it's just they do the things in relation to Krishna. And then Prabhupada in the purport also speaks about how artificially these sense desires can't be stopped, but if one is engaged in Krishna consciousness, then automatically sense desires subside without extraneous efforts, because you engage them positively. Okay, and then such a transcendentally situated person has no sense desires resulting from petty materialism, Rather, he remains always happy in his natural position of eternally serving the Supreme Lord. Okay? Dukvesh anudvigna mana sukeshu vigataspriha vitaraga bhaya krodha sitadir muni ruchyate. Vaishnava Prabhu?
Sorry, one who is not disturbed in mind even amidst the threefold miseries or elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called a sage of steady mind.
Thank you. So this verse and the next one responds to the question, answers the question, how does he speak? Meaning, how does he respond? How does he deal with others, other people? And then this verse explains that there is this emotional non-entanglement with the material. So he's not elated when there is happiness. He's not distressed or depressed when there is, distress. He's free from attachment, fear, and anger. And that's how he can be a sage of steady mind. In the material world, there's always going to be ups and downs. There's I don't know, I might have mentioned this before. It's something Keshav Maharaj explained, and I really, really like it. There is a Chitraketu Maharaj. You can read about him in the 6th canto. And if anybody had many ups and downs in his life, then that's Chitraketu Maharaj. He was a king, 10 million wives, all the enjoyment are there, so it's up. Even though he had so many wives, he didn't have any kids. And for a king, it's very important to have a child, so that's a down. Now then these sages, Narada Muni and another sage came, they gave him a blessing. No, maybe. Anyway, some sages came, gave him a blessing so you can have a child. Up. The child will be called Harsha Shoka, happiness, distress. That's the name of the child. No, that's okay, it's no problem. Maybe he'll be a little spoiled or whatever. He has the child, he's definitely very up, very happy. Then the other wives get jealous, they poison the child dies, very much down. And then Narada Muni comes, kind of brings the child back to life, and the child preaches to him, he gets some spiritual understanding up again. And then he advances in spiritual life, he becomes I can't think of the name, some kind of, not Gandharva, but something like that, traveling around Vidyadhara, something like that, in his aeroplane. Again, things are going really well. And then he makes a comment about Lord Shiva. He gets cursed by Parvati Devi, again down. He takes birth as a demon, Vritrasura, very much down. He gets killed by Indra. But then after he gets killed by Indra, he goes back to Lord Sankarshan. So if anybody has ups and downs, it's Chitraketu. But his kind of realization or his kind of explanation of this, he says, in the material world, the three modes are always flowing. Guna pravaha etosmin, koshapa koanugraha. What's a curse and what's a benediction? Something he thought was a benediction, that he got a child, actually turned out to be a curse because the child died. Something he thought was a curse, he was cursed by Parvati Devi, actually turned out to be a benediction. He could go back to Godhead much quicker. So Keshav Maharaj says, all these ups and downs, that means that we are alive. And when we are in a hospital, they have this heart monitor. It goes up and down, up and down, up and down. So in the same way, that's how we know we are alive. We go up and down. But rather than getting too carried away by happiness or distress, understand that something that seems to be happiness may later on turn to be distress. Something that seems to be distress may later on turn out to be happiness. So don't get too carried away. Nice to see you, Sami. Hare Krishna. So this is a nice pastime for us to meditate on, and also to help us kind of be equibalanced, equipoised, even in ups and downs. Okay, and then we can see Srila Prabhupada's own example. Sometimes things were going really well. He had all these opulent temples and, all the disciples worshipping him, but he just carried on traveling. He wasn't looking to settle down in some comfortable situation. And then sometimes there were difficulties, especially in the beginning, nobody was helping him, or in India, he got a sunstroke, he was, no money, nobody to help him, but he still carried on. So up or down, Prabhupada carried on serving Krishna. So this is something we can also do. And for a devotee, there is no kind of anger or frustration, because he knows that everything is due to Krishna's arrangement. Even our past karma is used by Krishna in a way that we can come closer to him. So don't get angry or resentful either towards other people or even towards Krishna. Krishna, why are you doing this to me? Because if we have the right consciousness, the right attitude, then these things can help us learn, can help us come closer to Krishna. Okay, and then Prabhupada says, for one who, if I can find this, one fixed in Krishna consciousness has neither attachment nor detachment, because his life is dedicated in the service of the Lord. Consequently, he is not at all angry even when his attempts are unsuccessful. Success or no success, a Krishna conscious person is always steady in his determination. So these are not just some words Prabhupada writes. This is a very deep kind of realization. This is how Prabhupada lived his life. Okay, so as devotees, what we do or what we don't do is decided by what will please Krishna, not what we would normally want to do or would enjoy doing, or what we would prefer not doing, but what will please Krishna. Yasarvatra nabi snehas tattat prapya subhasubham navinandanti nadveshti tasya pragya pratishtita. Sita Valapi Mataji? Sami?
In the material world, one who is unaffected by whatever good or evil he may obtain, neither praising it nor despising it, is firmly fixed in perfect knowledge.
Thank you. It continues the same theme. Remember, these verses answer how does he respond. So because he's focused on the spiritual, then he's not so affected by the material. Now, it doesn't mean that we become desensitized or callous or blind to other people's suffering or even to our own suffering, but it doesn't completely dominate our consciousness. It doesn't overwhelm us so much, because our consciousness is fixed in Krishna. And one thing is, when bad things happen, but even good, sometimes getting too happy about things, that can also make us carried away. In the Mahabharata, Arjuna takes a vow that he will kill Jayadratha. He says, unless I kill Jayadratha by the end of today, then I enter into fire. And then the Kauravas are really, really happy, because they think that's the only thing we need to do. Tomorrow, if we can protect Jayadratha, Arjuna will enter into fire, and then we basically won the war. That's the end. So then they kind of place Jayadratha at the very, very end of the army, and Arjuna has to fight his way through, millions of soldiers, and it's almost the end of the day. And of course, Arjuna took this vow, and then he wasn't worried, because he knew Krishna will help me protect my vow. But then Krishna had to do something. It was almost the end of the day. The sun was going down, and they stopped fighting when the sun went down. Sun was going down. Jayadratha was still quite far away. So Krishna kind of pulled a cloud in front of the sun, and then all the Kauravas thought that the day is finished. Jayadratha is still alive. Arjuna will enter into fire. We won. So they were really, really happy. They put their weapons down, and then Krishna pulled the cloud away. The sun was still up, and that's how Arjuna killed Jayadratha. Don't feel too sorry for Jayadratha. The reason Arjuna wanted to kill him, because Jayadratha helped kill Arjuna's son, Abhimanyu. So it wasn't a one against one. Somebody was fighting against Abhimanyu, but so many big soldiers, big fighters, warriors fought against the 16-year-old Abhimanyu. So don't feel too sorry for him. Anyway, it's an example for how even getting overly happy without good reason, not without good reason, but getting too absorbed in the happiness can also distract us from Krishna consciousness. Okay. Yada samharate chayam kurman gani vasarvashaha indriyani indriyartebhyas tasya pragya pratishtita. Paramananda Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. One who is able to withdraw his senses from sense objects, as the tortoise draws its limbs within the shell, is firmly fixed in perfect consciousness.
Thank you. So these verses start explaining how does he sit, meaning how does he control his senses. So remember, how does a person whose consciousness is merged in transcendence, how does he sit? How does he control his senses? And this is, Krishna compares it to a tortoise. So it's a nice tortoise here. When he needs his legs, he can float around with them. And when he doesn't need his legs, or there's some danger, then he can pull them into his shell. So in the same way, devotees, transcendentalists, when they need their senses, they use them, but otherwise they don't just look for things all the time. Because just as for the tortoise, these limbs make him vulnerable. So that's where predators can catch him and eat him up. So in the same way, our senses also make us vulnerable. That's one of the places where Maya enters. So we need to kind of consider, okay, these are our weak points. Through these we perceive all the sense objects. So we need to be careful with that. Prabhupada says in the purport that the yogi or a self-realized soul is able to control the senses according to his plan. Meaning, okay, I need to eat prasadam now, I'm using my senses, but I won't just kind of snack or graze all day. But, when I plan to eat, I eat. Same way, what we see. We had this really serious example at the beginning, Arjuna's seeing all that pasya. Too much seeing kind of created the wobble in Arjuna. That's why he wanted to stop or didn't want to fight. So in the same way, if you need to see something. So don't walk around with your eyes closed because you're a devotee. But just also don't kind of look at more things than you need to, or look at things that it's going to distract you. I had this experience that I'm usually quite happy with wherever I live. I don't think I have very kind of big expectations with that, but somebody or somewhere I saw this magazine of different houses. So I was waiting in a doctor's office or something, and I kind of started looking at it. And this beautiful garden, and the house is arranged like this, and I could say, it would be so nice to have a house like that. It's just, you just kind of look at pictures or something, but you can see how the Maya can enter through the senses. So just kind of pull them in when you don't need them. So rather than scanning the horizon for sense objects, if you don't use them, if you don't need them, don't use them. Okay. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehina rasavajam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. Leon?
Though the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, the taste for sense objects remains. But seizing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness.
Thank you. So this is a very important principle that we already started learning about in Nectar of Instruction. So first verse in Nectar of Instruction was Vacho vegam, manasha kroda vegam, jiva vegam, udarapasta vegam, that we need to control the urges. But for each urge, Prabhupada explained that it's not just a case of controlling them and not doing, kind of restricting them, but engaging them positively. So this verse explains the same principle, that just restricting the senses from sense enjoyment, you still have the taste. But if you stop this engagement because you experience the higher taste, then only can you be fixed in consciousness. So giving up the sense object, the desire remains. So that's the vinivartante. So just saying, I'm not going to eat sweets, I'm not going to eat sweets, I'm not going to eat sweets, I'm not going to eat sweets. The desire is still there. But if you give yourself something really tasty instead, then you're not that bothered about the sweets. So experiencing a higher taste, then one no longer desires the sense object. So that's the nivartante. So that's why the verse says so. Vishaya vinivartante, so the taste is still there even you restrict yourself from the sense objects. But if you experience a higher taste, then nivartate, that taste goes away. Vaishnava Prabhu?
In this case, what I understand is that developing a higher taste for Harinam,
Yeah.
or following the principles, but as a point of joke, or something funny, if there is Shrikhand and Gulab Jamun, so you can leave Shrikhand and go for Gulab Jamun. But if you ask my wife, she'll say I'll go for both. That's my problem.
Well, it's prasadam, so that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, prasadam. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, but that's a very good point that you made, Prabhu, is that it's a taste for Harinam, taste for spiritual things. So if we don't get a higher taste, if we don't get the holy name, taste for the holy name, or taste for the prasadam, shrikant, and gulab jamun, then it's torture. It's self-torture. But if there is a positive engagement, then that's how the restraint becomes natural and easy to follow. Otherwise, it causes, you can even say, psychological problems. If you either don't deprivation, so not doing something, or overindulgence, both can cause psychological problems. So rather than trying to just stop doing things, give yourself something better instead. Of course, you need to restrain yourself, but don't just base it on restraint and restriction, but base it on higher taste. And then you can have like a stable consciousness. Yeah. Anagasuri and Madhira Mataji?
Hare Krishna, I wanted to ask in terms of, for example, for the children, there'll be certain things that they want to do, or certain activities that I think I want to involve them into, but they may be mundane. You just don't know where to draw the line on what they should do, what they shouldn't do, like that. Can you give me some input from that?
It's a very, very difficult thing with children. I remember it was like a constant, constant difficulty. The most important thing, which I heard from other older devotees, and I also experienced myself, is to make Krishna consciousness something happy and joyful and something that they enjoy. And then the other things won't be as attractive. And then different children will enjoy different things. So a lot of Krishna conscious youth, they really love kirtan. They like playing the mridanga, and they will go around on all the harinams and the 24-hour kirtans they can go to because they just love that. Other children like making flower garlands, or help cook, or whatever else. Of course, when they're little, it's different, but it's really important to make it a positive, enjoyable, happy thing, rather than, no, we can't do this because we are devotees, no, you can't do that because we are devotees, no, you can't speak to this person because we are devotees. So okay, maybe you don't want them to speak to that person or associate with that person, but then give them something very positive instead. So it's the same principle, and it's a very relevant question. And it's also quite, how would you say? I remember when my children were little, it was a constant, okay, should I let them do this? Should I not let them do this? And also, when they are very little, it's not necessary. But when they are older, you don't just want to isolate them from the world, but you can help them understand how to deal with it as devotees. Otherwise, if you completely shut everything out as they grow up, then once they're like 16 or 18, they will just kind of, not always, but quite often they jump straight into it because they feel that I missed out on so much. And so just kind of try to find that balance. And it's a very dynamic thing. So something that works when your child is 3 years old doesn't work when they are 8. Something that works when they are 8 doesn't work when they are 15. So try to kind of roll with it, go with it. But the most important, like I said, the best advice I got and the best thing I experienced is to make it fun, make it happy, make it joyful. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Yes, thank you, Hare Krishna.
Okay. Let's see the next verse. Yatato hyapi kaunteya purushasya vipaschita indriyani pramatini haranti prasabam mana. Gunachuda Mataji?
The senses are so strong and impetuous, O Arjuna, that they forcibly carry away the mind, even of a man of discrimination who is endeavouring to control them.
So this is quite serious, that endeavoring and discerning are not enough. So it's not enough just to have like an understanding and discrimination. It's not enough just to make an effort for sense control, because the senses are very, very strong. And then Prabhupada in the purport gives some examples of this great sage Vishwamitra, who was misled by Menaka. She's some heavenly lady into sex enjoyment. And it says that Vishwamitra was just meditating with his eyes closed, and then this heavenly lady came by, and Vishwamitra only heard the ankle bells. And that created this image of sense enjoyment in his mind. So sometimes just from a very small thing, it can grow into something big. So we need to be very, very careful. And he also gives the example of Yamunacharya, who kind of says this quite serious, very heavy thing, you could say. Since my mind has been engaged in the service of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, I have been enjoying an ever new transcendental humor. And whenever I think of sex life with a woman, my face at once turns from it and I spit at the thought. So this is one point here, is that the joy or the happiness that comes from serving Krishna is much better than the highest happiness you can get in the material world, which is sex life. But then another thing which sometimes people get very upset about, or they misunderstand, is spitting at the thought. It doesn't mean that he spits at women or for women at men. It's more just he feels disgusted with himself if he thinks about these things. So many, many years ago, fortunately, some brahmacharis misunderstood this verse, and their daily practice was when they walked past the ladies' ashram, they would spit on the kind of door or something to show how renounced and detached they are. But that's not really the point of this verse. So if we're going to be disgusted with anything, it should be ourselves, that we have these thoughts, not that, for men, women, or for... Okay, so just to make sure we don't misunderstand these things. Okay, and then discrimination, the discriminating transcendentalist, that's internal. Endeavor is external, but even all these internal, external are not enough, because the senses are really, really strong. The senses are a little bit like fingers around the palm. So we have 5 senses: eyes, nose, ears, touch, taste, like that. And all the information comes in through the senses into the mind, and then the mind kind of thinks about it and how to enjoy it. And when the mind decides it wants to enjoy, then the intelligence starts making plans. So either from past experiences or memories of sense enjoyment, or present imaginations of how I could enjoy, that's how the senses carry away the mind. And then when we study chapter 3, we will see the whole process of how the senses, the mind, the intelligence are kind of steps in this process. Now, as devotees, we may also experience these things. I'm just going to use the gulab jamun example. You can just fill it in with anything you want. So when a materialist sees a gulab jamun, he says, hey, there's a gulab jamun, I can enjoy it. When an advanced devotee sees a gulab jamun, we are not talking about prasadam gulab jamuns here, a gulab jamun, he says, no, I can see the gulab jamun, I know it's tasty, but I'm not going to meditate on it, I'm not going to contemplate it, I just don't want it. And then a beginner devotee, he's kind of in between. He sees the gulab jamun, sometimes he says yes, sometimes he says no, sometimes he says, well, let's think about it, maybe later on I'll have some gulab jamun when nobody can see me. Okay, so the process of devotional service is helping us go from the, wow, there is a gulab jamun, I want to eat it, to no, I don't want it. And sometimes in between, there are sometimes ups and downs. Okay, so don't get too discouraged or negative if it happens sometimes, but rather than getting discouraged or depressed, fill the mind with thoughts about Krishna, and then the gulab jamun will become less and less attractive, both because the heart becomes purified and because we get a higher taste, and the gulab jamuns are not so attractive. Okay. Tani sarvani samyamya yukta sita matpara vashihi yasyandriyani tasya pragya pratishtita. Sita Sundari Mataji?
One who restrains his senses, keeping them under full control, and fixes his consciousness upon me is known as a man of steady intelligence.
Okay, so there's a few things in this verse. One is that this is the first time Krishna mentions that we should fix our consciousness on him. So far he was just talking about that one should control the senses, withdraw the senses, get a higher taste, maybe fix on the Supreme. So he was a teacher of self-control, but now he's also the object of the senses. So that's where the senses, that's where the mind, the consciousness should be fixed on. That's what's called matparam, or matpara. Okay, and Prabhupada in the purport gives this example of a matpara devotee whose consciousness is fixed on the Lord, this Ambarish Maharaj, who engages all his different senses in the service of the Lord. So fixes the mind, the words, the hands, eyes, ears, everything. He engages in Krishna consciousness, and that's how he's a matpara devotee, one who is fixed in Krishna. And then the process of this kind of becoming a matpara, fixed in consciousness, is control, concentration, and conquest. So these are the three stages of dealing with the mind. So first, we just need to control it, restrict it. Then we need to concentrate it on Krishna. And then finally, there is conquest, when our mind, our consciousness is so absorbed in Krishna that nothing else affects it, nothing else can come in. So control it, concentrate it on Krishna, and then there is conquest. Okay, so these are the three stages. Then Prabhupada in the purport, I think towards the end, he says, the example of fire is sometimes given as a blazing fire burns everything within a room. Lord Vishnu, situated in the heart of the yogi, burns up all kinds of impurities. Okay, so meditating on Krishna or Vishnu is very beneficial for two reasons. One is it burns up all the impurities, it burns up all the past things that make it difficult to control the mind. And number two, it gives a higher taste. So for both for the past and for the future, that's best. That's the best thing. Okay. Now the next verses explain what happens if instead of Krishna, one fixes the mind on sense objects. So that's going to be the next two verses. We'll look at the verses together. But first of all, is this okay so far? Any points or questions? Okay. So we'll read both verses. Deyato vishayan pumsa sangaste supajayate sangat sanjayate kama kamat krodha vijayate krodat bhavati sammoha sammoha smriti vibrama smriti bramshat buddhinasho buddhinashat pranashyati. So we'll ask Anagasuri Prabhu to read both translations.
While contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them, and from such attachment lust develops, and from lust anger arises. From anger complete delusion arises, and from delusion bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost, and when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material whirlpool. It's similar to 337, isn't it?
I don't know just by heart what 337 is, but possibly yes. 337. Yeah. So that's where Krishna starts speaking about karma. Yeah, lust. Yeah, very, very similar. In fact, he will kind of explain this same process. Okay, so this is a process. It's a little bit like, okay, first of all, these are the stages. So Dhyayato means contemplation. So you see the gulab jamun and you don't kind of continue walking, you stop. Well, let me consider this gulab jamun for a moment. Okay? And then Sangha means attachment. It means other things as well, but here it means attachment. I like this gulab jamun. Kama is lust. I want this gulab jamun, whatever it costs. I'll get it. Then from kama, from lust, comes anger. Because either we can't get the gulab jamun or somebody wants to stop us, So from lust always comes anger. And then from anger comes confusion about what is good and what is bad. So at this point, the mind is so caught up in the gulab jamun that it forgets all the what's the right thing to do, what's the wrong thing to do. And then this becomes deeper, the smriti vibrama. Smriti can mean both memory or smriti scriptures. So we forget what we know, we forget the scriptures. So it's kind of, we get confused, illusioned. Then buddhi nasha, buddhi means intelligence, nasha means kind of destroyed. So that means that we mistake the bad to be good. So because of confusion and forgetfulness, we forget to use our intelligence, or our intelligence is covered over. And then pranashyati, one is kind of, Prabhupada says, falls back into the material pool. One time when Prabhupada was giving a class, he kind of illustrated this falling back into the material pool by saying, when something falls into water, it just makes a sound like bloop, something like that. And the devotees kind of took it on board, and that's where this ISKCON expression comes about somebody blooping. I don't know if it's still used. It means that, they leave Krishna consciousness, so that's where it comes from. So that's the process. And then as it goes further and further down, it's like an avalanche. It starts with a really small snowball, and then as it goes down, it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, more and more momentum. It's harder and harder to stop. So it's a lot easier to stop contemplation than when somebody is already very angry. Okay, so the quicker we can stop, the easier it is. So if we have negative thoughts, or if we can kind of feel our senses going in a direction we don't want them to go, or the mind is going in a direction we don't want them to go, it's better to stop it there and then. And also the stopping is not just, I'm not going to think about this, I'm not going to think about this, I'm not going to think about this, because that means in a negative way you are still thinking about it. It's better to give something positive. So rather than, I'm not going to think about this gulab jamun, I'm not going to think about this gulab jamun, give yourself something. I'm going to think about how to make garlands for the deities, or something positive. So don't just kind of suppress it, but use it positively. And this is not just, Anagasuri Prabhu, okay, please.
Sorry, Mother, just had a question. Could you, this pranashyati, could it be the same as vinashyati that we learned in the
Yeah.
two instruction? Thank you.
Yeah. I think it's just different kind of prefixes in Sanskrit that make it bigger or make it more pronounced, this pranashyati or vinashyati. Okay, so another point I wanted to make is the way we can kind of stop it or stop this contemplation is by using it in Krishna's service. So even our creativity, our imagination, our talents, our intelligence, all these things, if we can, as much as possible, try to use them in Krishna's service, try to spiritualize them. Otherwise, we will feel kind of dissatisfied. So if you are really good in art, or music, or teaching, or gardening, then that's the talent Krishna gave you to use it in his service. So don't just kind of try to repress it or pretend it's not there, because it's there. Just like Arjuna, he will fight anyway because he's a Kshatriya. In the same way, if we are an artist, we are going to end up doing art anyway, so try to do it for Krishna. Okay. And then in the purports, Prabhupada gives the example of Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva. I don't know which purport, maybe in the previous one. Yeah, so Lord Shiva was agitated by Parvati, and Lord Brahma was also agitated. So these are examples we should understand in a proper way. So this is not to criticize Lord Brahma or Lord Shiva, who are kind of way above us, but more to understand that the only process that will help us control the mind and the senses is if we engage them in Krishna's service. So that's why Prabhupada gives as contrast Haridas Thakur, who was tempted even by Maya Devi herself, but because of his unalloyed devotion to Krishna, he easily passed the test. When we actually read these pastimes about Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma in the Bhagavatam, there's the explanations that these great personalities, usually when these things happen to them or they do these things, this is so we can learn from it. So it's not that we can criticize them or we can think that we are better than them or anything like that, okay? But here Prabhupada gives it as something we can learn from. Okay, and the overall principle is that don't be attached to anything, but accept everything in relation to Krishna. Then you won't be possessive, then you won't be attached, but you just use it in Krishna's service. If you just reject everything without understanding its relationship to Krishna, then that's not proper renunciation. But use everything in Krishna's service, don't just reject it. So it's the same for your creativity, talents, intelligence, everything else, opportunities you have. So don't just reject it, use it in Krishna's service. And one more thing I wanted to mention, which hopefully is a very positive take on this progression, is that just as it works with sense objects, with gulab jamuns, it also works with prasadam gulab jamuns, it also works with Krishna. So the more we contemplate Krishna, the more we develop attachment for Krishna, and the more we develop not material lust, but this really, really strong attraction, attachment to him, like you could say Raganuga Bhakti, the more we get upset when we can't go and see Krishna, we can't cook for Krishna, we can't sing for Krishna, and then we become well, you can these later ones you can understand in different ways. You can understand that you become completely unattached to anything material. You don't care about anything materially good or bad. You're only interested in Krishna in the different ways. But at least the first part is very, very clear. So just as it works with sense objects, it also works with Krishna. Okay. Leon, is that you wanting to say something or?
So when you were talking about the avalanche,
Mm-hmm.
when you're like contemplating Galabjamans, and inevitably leads to a fall down. So does that mean that if like someone's getting more of a taste for Krishna, is it picking up? Is the pace picking up?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a very good, thank you. Yeah, so the easier it gets, I don't know if you had this experience, maybe you've not read Bhagavad-gita or the scriptures for a few weeks or something, and it's really hard to sit down and read. But once you kind of start doing it, maybe regularly, it gets easier and easier, you get more of a taste. Same with chanting. And also the higher levels of devotional service, in the beginning it can be quite hard because all the anarthas are there, they're kind of holding you back. The less and less anarthas there are, the more and more effortless and easy and self-propelling devotional service becomes.
Nice.
Just like the avalanche. Very good. Thank you. Okay, so let's see the next one. Ragadvesha vimuktaisthu vishayan indriyascharan atma vashyar videyatma prasadam adhigachati. Madhira Mataji?
But a person free from all attachment and aversion and able to control his senses through regulative principles of freedom can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord.
Thank you. So usually when we talk about regulative principles, the first thing that comes to mind is not freedom. So regulative principles would mean restriction. I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't do the next thing. Okay, so it can be a little difficult to understand how is the regulation giving me freedom. Can you think about that a little?
It frees us from entanglement with the objects of the senses and the whole material.
Very good. I thought it's going to be a long discussion, but you just gave the answer. Yeah. So it basically, it doesn't, I'm not saying it in a negative way. So it protects us. So, you know, when you got Sundari and Sundari decides she wants to use the chainsaw, then Mataji will hold her down. So in one sense, you could say it's restriction, but it's actually protection. It's protecting Sundari, so later on she's still free to play. So a mother's, Haribol Sundari, a mother's embrace maybe stopping the child from doing what it wants, but it's actually protecting the child, protecting others around it as well. So in the same way, these regulative principles of freedom protect us from entanglement, protect us from losing our freedom. So this is how to understand. So it's not deprivation, but it's actually protection. Or, you know, if we get like a doctor says, you know, you need to follow this diet, and it's also, it may be difficult in the beginning, but it's actually protecting us. It's making us healthy so we can live our life properly. Okay. Prasade sarva dukhanam hanirasyo pajayate prasanna chetaso hyashu buddhir paryavatishtate. Vaishnava Prabhu.
For one thus satisfied, into brackets in Krishna consciousness, the threefold miseries of material existence exist no longer. In such satisfied consciousness, one's intelligence is soon well established.
Thank you. So when we get this prasad, Krishna's mercy, then we get both kind of become joyful and we get this unshakable intelligence. And because we are joyful, then the material miseries, it's not that they don't exist in one sense, but they don't bother us so much. So if we receive the Lord's mercy, this prasad, then the material miseries end because we experience this spiritual joy and satisfaction, and we understand things for what they are. So we are well established in spiritual intelligence. And this spiritual intelligence comes both from studying, we get a kind of theoretical understanding, then from practicing, we get a deeper practical understanding, and then by Krishna's mercy, we get an even deeper spiritual intelligence. So one part depends on us and on our own efforts, studying and practicing, and the other part depends on Krishna's mercy, Krishna's kindness. Okay. Nasti buddhir ayuktasya na chayuktasya bhavana na cha bhavayata shantir ashantasya kutasukam. Megambari Mataji.
Hare Krishna. One who is not connected with the Supreme in Krishna consciousness can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there is no possibility of peace. And how can there be any happiness without peace? Hare Krishna.
Thank you. So in one sense, this is a contrast to the previous verse. So if you are well established, material miseries exist no longer. Like if you are well established in Krishna consciousness, and you are fully joyful. And this is the opposite. But if you are not connected with the Supreme, then you don't have transcendental intelligence, you don't have a steady mind, and there is no peace. So without a connection with Krishna, then we end up with agitation, frustration. Everybody's looking for happiness. If there is no peace, there can't be happiness. Now this means inner peace. We don't really have so much control about what's going on outside, but and then we can't have inner peace without a steady mind, and we can't have a steady mind without absorption in Krishna, because the ups and downs are always there. We can't control that, but if we engage our mind in Krishna, then the ups and downs don't bother us so much. So then we can be steady and equipoised. Prabhupada makes a very interesting statement. It's a very short purport, but Prabhupada makes this statement: disturbance is due to want of an ultimate goal. So people can set up and achieve many temporary goals. I want to become CEO of this company. I want to become a millionaire. I want to get a Bugatti. And then you become the CEO, you become the millionaire, you buy your Bugatti, but you're still not happy. That's why you get very successful, famous, rich people still depressed, on antidepressant, taking drugs, sometimes even committing suicide, because they thought they're going to be happy. Once I'm famous, I'll be happy. Once I'm rich, I'll be happy. But then they achieve that and they're not happy. So that's because they don't have an ultimate goal. All these are temporary goals. And the ultimate goal is relationship with Krishna, our connection with Krishna. And then even things we do want in this world, we want them so we can serve Krishna. So we might want to become rich, so I can give lots of donations. I might want to become a very good artist, so I can paint pictures of Krishna or dress the deities nicely. I might want to become a very good cook, so I can cook for Krishna nicely. So even these apparent material things, We want them so we can serve Krishna. Prabhupada also quotes this verse from the last verse of the 5th chapter, which is called the peace formula. When we get there, we'll study it in more detail. Bhaktara Myagatapasam. But it means that Krishna is the supreme enjoyer, Krishna is the supreme controller, and Krishna is the supreme friend. So if we understand these three things, then we can be peaceful. Because if Krishna is the supreme controller and enjoyer, I don't have to worry about trying to control things. I don't have to worry about why am I not enjoying. Because it's Krishna who's the supreme enjoyer. I just need to make him enjoy. I don't need to worry about controlling things. I just need to serve Krishna and he will control things for me. And I don't need to feel lonely. I don't need to feel helpless because Krishna is the supreme friend. And to have a friend who's the most powerful, greatest controller, who's in everyone's heart, you can't really think about a better friend. He will definitely understand me because he's in my heart. You know, sometimes we have this problem with friends. They don't quite understand us because only Krishna will fully understand us. Okay, so once we have this understanding, Krishna is the supreme controller, supreme enjoyer, supreme friend, then we can be peaceful and happy. Okay. Indriyanam hicharatam yanmano vidiyate tadasya harati pragyam vayurnavami vambasi. Sita Sundari Mataji.
As a strong wind sweeps away a boat on the water, even one of the roaming senses on which the mind focuses can carry away a man's intelligence.
Okay, so again, what happens if you are not absorbing your mind in Krishna? So in verse 60, we had the senses carrying away the mind. So we spoke about how the senses are so strong that they forcibly carry away the mind of even a man of discrimination who's trying to control them. And now it's the senses carry away even one of the roaming senses on which the mind focuses. It carries away the intelligence. So it's not just the mind, but it carries away the intelligence, which is supposed to be higher than the mind. So that's why the senses are so dangerous, and that's where everything starts from. So whatever the senses are focusing on, that's what the mind is going to focus on, and that's where the intelligence goes. That's why they need positive engagement. Okay, the boat is just there to make it more dramatic. Okay. Tasmad yasya mahabaho nirgrihitani sarvashaha indriyartebhyas tasya pragya pratishtita. Vaishnava Prabhu.
Therefore, O mighty armed, one whose senses are restrained from their objects is certainly of steady intelligence.
Thank you. So Krishna calls Arjuna Mahabaho. So mighty armed one. He's a very great warrior. He's very strong. But the true test of one's strength is not how many arrows he can fire and how much he can fight, but how much he can control the senses. How much determination and willpower is there to control the senses. So Krishna is telling Arjuna, you might be a very great warrior, but can you fight the senses? Can you control the senses? Okay, that's one point. This indriyartebhyas, this is quite a common, it's two words together. It's quite common connection in these Bhagavad-gita verses, and also a compound word later on. It means the senses and the sense objects. So indriyani is the senses, indriya artebhya is the sense objects. So don't allow prolonged contact of the senses with the sense objects, otherwise they will carry away the mind. Okay, and then Prabhupada gives us the supreme advice. One can curb the forces of the senses only by the means of Krishna consciousness, or engage them in loving service of Krishna. As enemies are curbed by superior force, remember Arjuna is a Kshatriya, a warrior, The senses can similarly be curbed, not by a human endeavor, but by keeping them engaged in the service of the Lord. So it's the very same principle what we learned in the first verse of Nectar of Instruction. How to control the urges, engage them in Krishna's service. Don't just try to restrict it, engage it in Krishna's service. Okay? Yanisha sarvabhutanam tasyam jagarti samyami tasyam jagarti bhutani sanisha pashyato mune. Paramananda Prabhu.
Thank you. What is night for all beings is a time of awakening for the self-controlled. And the time of awakening for all beings is night for the introspective sage.
Thank you.
Okay.
So this night and day doesn't refer to kind of different time zones, chronological kind of time. So for example, for Sita Sundari, I think it's kind of midday. For us, it's coming to evening. And if somebody is in India, that's middle of the night. So it doesn't refer to that, but it refers to, the night refers to a lack of activity, lack of interest, and the day refers to activity, interest, so the opposite of night. So what's night for all beings where they don't have any interest is daytime, time of awakening for the self-controlled. So most people are not interested in spirituality, connection with Krishna. That's nighttime. You know, ask them to read Bhagavad-gita, it's boring. I have no interest there. But for us, that's what's interesting. You know, you can meet a like-minded devotee and have a really long conversation about one verse of Bhagavad-gita. You know, if you try to have the same conversation with someone on the bus, they're like, what's that all about? Okay. And then the opposite is also true. So what's time of awakening for all beings? So where their interest, where their activity is, you know, how to get a bigger house, more money, how to get another girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever, that's night for the introspective sage. So devotees, the introspective sage has no interest in that because it's temporary. He knows that there is no real happiness in that. So basically what's happening here is what's the definition of success? So there is a material definition of success and a spiritual definition of success. So materialists look for the material definition and we look for the spiritual definition. Now, in our spiritual life, it's important that don't impose material definitions of success on our spiritual life. Okay, so what would be considered material success? You know, you become a temple president, you become a well-known devotee, you become this or that. That's not actually success in spiritual life. It's a material position. The person may be a wonderful devotee. That's not kind of to criticize any temple presidents or famous devotees, but that's not success in spiritual life. Success in spiritual life is how strong is our connection with Krishna. You know, how much material desires going down, how much spiritual desires are going up. And in general, our spiritual life is basically moving from material definitions of success, so what's important materially, to spiritual definitions of success. So moving from that to that. It's a journey, but just keep it in mind that that's the journey we are on. Apuryamanam achala pratishtam samudramapa pravishanti advat tadvat kamayam pravishanti sarve sashanti mapnoti nakama kami. Gunachuda Mataji?
A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires.
Thank you. So Prabhupada explains in the purport that there is the ocean, and no matter how many rivers flow in the ocean, the ocean just remains the same. Okay, there's a tide, it kind of goes in and out a little bit, but overall the ocean remains the same, no matter how much water flows into it. And the analogy here is that no matter how many, you could say, apparently desirable things a sage, an introspective sage sees, he doesn't become external, he doesn't overflow, he doesn't start desiring those desires and trying to achieve them, trying to get them. So to make it very simple with the gulab jamuns, no matter how many gulab jamuns the devotee sees, he doesn't kind of reach out to get the gulab jamuns and eat them. He sees them, but he doesn't do anything about them. So there is this phrase in the verse, kama kami. So a kama kami means a desirer of desires. So kama means desire. So there are desires, there are sense objects, but the thing is we don't become a desirer of desires. We don't become a desirer of sense objects. Okay? So those things are there, but we don't become agitated. We don't try to fulfill them. And then to kind of continue this ocean analogy, if you had science lessons, of course, you know that the reason the ocean doesn't overflow because all the water evaporates from it. And then that becomes the clouds and more rain, like that. But in the same way, we can say that just as the water goes up when it's evaporating, in the same way, if our desires go up towards Krishna, then we also want overflow. We also want kind of start desiring those desires or try to do something about those desires. And then Prabhupada in the purport explains that as long as somebody has a material body, there are going to be demands for sense gratification. So we need to eat, we need to sleep, we need to do certain things, but just don't do more than what you need. It's going to be different for different people, what's the minimum necessity, the bare necessities of life is going to be different for different people, but just live in a simple way and then don't become a desirer of desires. Okay, and this you can also see how far along are you or how you are advancing, progressing in Krishna consciousness, is that even though the kind of sense objects are there, you're not that bothered about them. I'm not saying test yourself and go to a nudist beach or anything like that. But if those things are there, do you get agitated or do you get less agitated than you used to be? So that way you can see your progress. Okay. Vihaya kamanya sarvan pumsam charati nispriha nirmamo nirahankara sashanti matigachati. Sita Sundari Mataji.
Person who has given up all desires for sense gratification, who lives free from desires, who has given up all sense of proprietorship and is devoid of false ego, he alone can attain real peace.
Thank you. So all these things that need to be given up. So peace comes not by relocation, moving somewhere else. Of course, sometimes that happens as well, but by renunciation. So when you give up desires for sense gratification, then you don't become frustrated, you don't become angry when it's not there. So once you give up this expectation that I'm going to have a gulab jamun at the Sunday feast, then you don't get upset if there are no gulab jamuns at the Sunday feast. So that's why giving up desires for sense gratification, living free from desires, giving up a sense of proprietorship, this nirmamo. So a devotee can have possessions, but having possessions is different from possessiveness. So you have possessions, you use them in Krishna's service, but you don't have this possessiveness. And also devoid of false ego. So false ego means I am this body, my enjoyment is through the senses. But when one gives up this false ego and has the real ego, then he knows I'm a spirit soul, Krishna's servant, and my enjoyment is through serving Krishna. And when there is this kind of shift in consciousness, then one can achieve real peace. And then Prabhupada explains the same thing, that desireless is not to desire anything for material sense gratification. And it's Krishna consciousness is actual desirelessness. So desirelessness doesn't mean that somebody becomes a stone, completely cold, no emotions, no feelings, no desires. It means that every emotion, every feeling, every desire is connected to Krishna. So don't try to become this impersonal, cold, emotionless, callous person. That's not a devotee. But a devotee is somebody who engages all these things with Krishna. Esha brahmi sthiti parta nainam prapya vimuhyati stitva vasyam antakalepi brahma nirvanam richati. Sitavalabi Mataji?
That is the way of the spiritual and godly life, after attaining which a man is not bewildered. If one is thus situated, even at the hour of death, one can enter into the kingdom of God.
Thank you. So this is the first time in Bhagavad-gita that the time of death is mentioned. So, how we should be situated at the time of death. And even if we don't feel that we are perfect, as we are practicing in life, at least at the time of death we should, or by the time of death we should achieve this consciousness. And of course we have Krishna's mercy to help us. So don't get too discouraged or disheartened if you feel that you're not progressing well enough. As long as you're trying, Krishna will help you. Krishna will appear in your mind. And there is also some nice, I think it's Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur who always gives this really nice, sweet explanations. He says this Brahmi Sthiti, Prabhupada explains it as spiritual situation. Generally it's a neutral gender, but here it's female, feminine. So it may be a reference to Srimati Radharani, by whose mercy we can attain Krishna, who may come for us at the end of our life. I guess this is just something, a sweet little note. Okay, and then in the purport, as Prabhupada does I think at the end of all purports, or at least most purports, the last verse of each chapter, he gives a summary of that chapter. So he says, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur summarized the second chapter as being the contents of the whole text. In the Bhagavad-gita, the subjects of Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga are mentioned. In the second chapter, the Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga have been clearly discussed. And a glimpse of Bhakti Yoga has also been given as the summary for the whole text. Anagasuri Prabhu?
Hare Krishna. I wanted to ask, you said that here that Radharani comes at the time of death. I'm just a little bit confused because I thought it was either the Vishnu Dutas or the Yama Dutas.
Oh, don't worry about that. No. Okay. So this is probably a little bit esoteric. Okay. So did I understand your question correctly, that at the time of death either the Vishnu Dutas or the Yama Dutas come, and how does Radharani come? Okay, so maybe I was a little bit too much, but okay. So if somebody's lived a sinful life, didn't think about Krishna at the time of death, Yamadutas come. Yamadutas take away the subtle body and the soul, because it's attached to the subtle body, it follows along. If somebody's a devotee, then the Vishnu Dutas come. Now, Vishnu Dutas, it's a general thing, they take you to Vishnu Loka. Now, which particular Vishnu Loka it is, where Lord Narasingha Dev is, or Lord Varaha, or Lord Ramachandra. If you're going to Goloka Vrindavan, then you are going there. And anyway, I don't want to go too much into it. Just take it that by Srimati Radharani's mercy, then we can go there. So, okay, just leave it as that. Pray to Srimati Radharani. Okay, any other questions or points, comments? Okay. Okay, so this was second chapter, and the summary of this last section about the Sthita Pragya, one who is fixed in consciousness. It's basically, if you withdraw your senses from the material, that's how does he sit, and engage them in the spiritual, in connection with Krishna, how does he walk, then you can be equipoised, undisturbed, because your consciousness is directed toward the spiritual. You're not kind of shaken by the material ups and downs. Now let me see if okay, so the homework will be next time, because some of it is related to chapter 3. But you can work on your Purva Svadhyaya, so try to have all the questions, work on all the questions up to the end of chapter 2 in the Purva Svadhyaya. That way you don't have them all at the end when you're preparing for the exam. You can also learn the shlokas, so even though there is no homework this week, you can work on those. Gunachudha Mataji?
Mataji, I sent you an email about some of the questions. I just wondered if you'd seen it.
Okay, I just check it quickly.
Sorry.
No problem. Because I saw some email from you. I thought maybe it's a homework. When did you send it?
Might have been about 2 weeks ago.
Oh, okay. My apologies.
No, that's okay.
So I see one from you, homework 3. Was that before then?
I think I can't remember. It might have been. It had preliminary questions in the title, in the subject.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, I'm not. I only have homework 3.
Okay, I'll have to maybe send it again then.
So send it again, and once you send it, can you send me a WhatsApp message, and then I can check whether I got it.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Okay, so thank you very much. As always, it's really nice reading Bhagavad-gita with you. I really appreciate that despite everything else that goes on in your life, you still come and study Bhagavad-gita together. And I really appreciate Sundari being here as the future Bhagavad-gita scholar. So have a wonderful week and see you next Monday. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad-gita ki jai.
Jai.
Sadhu Seva Sadhu Sangha ki
Jai.
jai. Nitya Premanandi Vanchakam
Jai.
Hari
Hari.
Hare Krishna. So nice to see you, Sita Mataji. I always just see a screen, and sometimes I can see your face.
Sorry, today I'm using iPad because my phone was not playing up, so it's a different device. Okay. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.